Because at first, Chris was like, dude, I got my training on lock. I was like, okay, let's, is there a small possibility that we could change some things?
Você tá querendo meter aquele shape pro verão? A Go Raw Pharma tem os melhores produtos com o melhor preço. Passa no primeiro link da descrição e garanta os seus produtos enquanto ainda tem estoque. Bora lá, rapaziada, ainda dá tempo pra meter aquele shape no verão.
E aí, fãs de bodybuilding, eu sou o Roger e hoje eu tô aqui para mais um vídeo, e o vídeo de hoje vai ser sobre um vídeo que saiu recentemente no canal do Honey Rambo, que para quem não sabe é o maior coach de fisiculturismo do mundo atualmente. É coach do chrisbumstead, Derek Lunsford e Harry Chopin, ou seja, o cara tem como seus atletas os principais atletas do mrolympia, e recentemente saiu no seu canal um vídeo fazendo alguns comentários sobre o mrolympia, comentando ali sobre Chris Bumstead, Harry Chopin. E bom, nesse vídeo aqui eu vou trazer para vocês um trecho legendado em que o Honey Rambo comenta sobre a preparação do Chris Bumstead, como foi tanto mentalmente quanto fisicamente pro Chris, e é muito interessante ouvir esse cara falar, até porque ele é o coach do Chris, e atualmente esse cara é o coach mais relevante do fisiculturismo mundialmente. Então essa careca aí sabe muito, rapaziada. Como é de costume, o canal RJB Bodybuilding trazendo sempre em primeira mão aqui pra vocês esse tipo de conteúdo. Então se você curte, eu peço que você deixe o seu like, se inscreva no canal para mais vídeos como esse. E é claro que vai sair cada vez mais vídeos como esse aqui no canal. Então chega de enrolação e bora pro vídeo.
And you just obviously mentioned Chris there. So kind of a little bit of moving into that. Were there some big differences? Like things that you had to tweak? Was it pretty much like a standard, like, yes, we're going into this like I would approach any other athlete? Were there some things that you had to tweak for Chris specifically?
No, it was very, very different, man.
How so?
A lot of different ways. I think this would be great for Chris to be on the podcast at some point. So if anybody knows Chris, I'll ask him if he should, you know.
I know a guy.
But Chris has obviously been very open about his health issues. So he has to be super conservative with everything that goes into his body. Everything. We're talking about foods. We're talking about just, he doesn't do junk food. He eats organic. He eats minimal gluten. I mean, everything that has to do with inflammation, he stomps out completely. And for me to build on that and try to understand it in the short amount of time that we had was very, very difficult. And contrary to, public opinion, we didn't have months and months and months together. We had about, I would guess, I had to go look at the exact calendar, around 14 weeks together.
Which y'all, you can keep saying this, but people are still going to
they can say whatever they want. But this is why, they can say whatever they want.
To set the record straight, you had about that amount of time.
Yeah, about that amount of time.
To learn a new athlete.
Learn a new athlete who has a medical condition, who has a lot of different things that I have to work around. Like he has a different training style than me, getting him introduced to the FSC7 training style with high volume and being able to do those kinds of things. Him being out here for a week with Hadi, being able to train both of those guys at the same time was really, really, I think, a huge, just positive. It was a huge positive being able to do that. So I can see them. We can kind of go over things with the workouts, seeing the intensity, the amount of weight, balancing out amount of weight versus volume. And so Chris comes from winning 3 Olympia titles. So he's already won 3 times. So he's no slouch. So for me, I'm trying to chase perfection and it's impossible. Everybody tries to do it. Every coach does it. It's impossible to get to, but we're all trying to go towards that goal of trying to bring in your client full, dry, separated, bring up weak points, minimize, maximize all the strong points, minimize any weak points. It's all about trying to be able to check all the boxes. And I felt like with Chris, getting to know him personally was the hardest thing because I know Courtney much better than I know Chris. Chris, we've only spoken a couple of times since the Arnold. That was it. As much, like I said, contrary to public opinion out there, that was it. So getting to know somebody at that level is a huge part of my coaching dynamic because what I do is I have to understand what makes that person tick and what that person's go buttons are. Sometimes you can be more aggressive. Sometimes you have to be less aggressive. Sometimes you have to work around certain different things, especially when someone's already been winning.
Mm-hmm.
They had such a great success together with Chris and with Ian. So talking to Ian several times on the phone, you know, we had some really long conversations of things that they did in the past, things that worked, some things that didn't work. Being able to just pick his brain, understand. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to make it stronger.
During peak week, you know, you approached Hadi very differently compared to how you approached Derek, compared to how you approached Chris. Each, you know, because we were doing these training sessions back to back to back with all three guys. And watching you would put on almost like a completely different face for each athlete because you got an idea of like what each athlete needs from you in those moments to drive them to be better. And it was very different for each of them. And so do you think that you could have done that with because Chris seems very receptive.
Mm-hmm.
Chris seems very much like, all right, tell me what to do and I'll knock it out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you could have, I mean, like, that's a tough question, but with any other athlete, that's a short period of time to learn somebody and get into it. What made you decide to do that?
I think once I started speaking to him and we were trying to add things in layers, I was saying, here's some information on my training. Try this out. Let's turn around and do this. Because at first, Chris was like, dude, I got my training on lock. I was like, okay, let's, is there a small possibility that we could change some things? It's like, well, yeah, but I mean, I think I'm okay with that. But again, I think it's great. Just we got to hear it out of his.
Yeah, we got to get Chris on.
We got to get Chris on to talk about it. So I don't want to speak for Chris, but it was one of those things where I think that we had to make up for a lot of that lost time. Why do I always work with somebody 9 months out? Because I want to know their personality. And lots of times I'll work with somebody in the off season and you'll never see me get them ready for a show. Because by the time I get to know them, know their personality, I just sometimes feel like it's not a good fit. And that's why I like to have a large off season with somebody, because that way I understand we got to trust each other. I got to trust that you're going to be able to use the information I'm going to give you, but you have to trust me that I'm going to give you the proper information.
Você está querendo meter aquele shape pro verão? A Go Raw Pharma tem os melhores produtos com o melhor preço. Passa no primeiro link da descrição e garanta os seus produtos enquanto ainda tem estoque. Bora lá, rapaziada, ainda dá tempo para meter aquele shape no verão.
Yeah, I just wanna be the greatest. Everybody knows my name, shit. I'ma have this whole fucking game list, spitting with the same wit, and I'm gonna be famous. Ain't nobody able to delay this. Coming up, I had a vision to make it. Never wanted to be nothing, always wanted to play shit. Sit in class, always wondering why I know the same shit. How the hell am I different if we all know the same shit? I ain't never let them doubt me. It's about me. Keep my head down, let my mouth speak. This around me, they all about the clout. See, we're the crowd.